Is my slide visible to all of you guys? Is my slide visible to all of you? Okay. So today we are starting the week 6 discussion on the subject farm machinery, and this subject is taken by Professor B.K. Tiwari, Director IIT Kharagpur, and Professor Agricultural and Food Engineering Department, IIT Kharagpur. And myself, Ayan Paul, I am a PMRF Research Scholar from IIT Kharagpur. I am the TA of this course, and by TA, my duties are I will first explain you the summary of all the weeks that are covered in this summary of all the lectures that are covered in this week, and later in the later half I will solve some question that are very similar to assignment, so that when you will solve the assignment you will not feel alienated. So let's start the discussion. Okay. So yeah, so first two lectures what we have covered regarding the tillage implements and traction and all those parameters. And then two lectures what we have done, the next two weeks we have covered the sowing implements and other implements that are used for the second farm machinery operation, that is sowing. And in the fifth week what we have done, we have designed the sowing implement, and we have seen how to test those implements. Okay, now this week what we will do, we will first cover in the second week we have discussed some of the traction parameters. Today we will see how we will measure those traction parameters using our lab setup. And second we will discuss about vegetables transplanter. We have already covered paddy transplanter, but today we will cover the vegetable transplanter. So starting with slip. So slip we have already discussed. What is slip? Slip is reduction in distance. Okay, someone is joining. Okay. So slip is reduction in distance travel per unit time. Why the distance is reducing? This is because our due to the traction, our vehicle or our tractor is not moving with the same velocity it should move. Okay, its velocity is decreasing. So we have two velocity. One is Vt, that is theoretical velocity, and one is Va, that is actual velocity. So actual velocity in slip condition, actual velocity is less than theoretical velocity. And slip percentage or you can say slip, it is a reduction in velocity divided by original velocity, that is Vt, theoretical velocity minus actual velocity divided by theoretical velocity. Okay, this is the formula of the slip. Now how we can measure the slip? Okay, so for measuring the slip we should know this Vt, we should know this Va. If we know these two things we can calculate the slip. Okay, so Vt is calculated by dr into nr1 plus nr2 divided by 2, and Va or actual velocity is calculated as df into nf. Okay, now what is these things, dr, nr and nf? What are those things? So actually for measuring the velocity, the sensor or the instrument that we use is known as encoder. Okay, you can see these are the encoders in the diagram. So we are using three encoders to measure slip. Okay, one encoder we are putting on the mudguard of the front wheel, and next to encoder we are putting on the mudguard of the rear wheel. Now the question is why we are putting three encoders and not four or not two. Okay, so the thing is always in a tractor, the tractor that we study is a two-wheel drive tractor, 2WD, two-wheel drive tractor. Okay, in two-wheel drive tractor the power is only on the rear wheels. Okay, the front wheels are towed. Okay, again I am repeating, in two-wheel drive tractors the power is only acting on the rear wheels, the front wheels are towed. Okay, so that is why our rear wheels move with the velocity, theoretical velocity. Okay, as power is coming on this wheel. Okay, this Vt is applicable for our rear wheels. Okay, RR, rear wheels, RRW, I am writing RRW. Okay, so this theoretical velocity is only applicable for rear wheels, but as the front wheel is not receiving the power, our front wheel are towed wheels. Okay, so that is why it is moving with Va, or the actual velocity. Okay, so that is why we are using you can say rear wheels, these are front wheels. Okay, front, FRW. Okay, so the actual velocity is applicable for front wheel and theoretical velocity is applicable for the rear wheels. So that is why we are using one encoder for front wheels, and we are using two encoder for rear wheel. So your question will be, why two encoder for rear wheels? If two encoder we are using, then two encoder we should also use for front wheels, but actually front wheels are towed wheels, so both these wheels are traveling at the same velocity, but rear wheels are powered wheels. As rear wheels are powered wheels, and also we have a differential provision. Okay, differential, we have a component called differential. According to this, by this component differential, our rear wheels can move with different speed. Now you will ask why we require different speed for rear wheels. The thing is, when our tractor operates in muddy condition or some other condition, a tractor may get sinked into the soil. In that condition, what we do is we use our differential unit. So by differential unit, the tire or the wheels that is in muddy condition, that we increase the speed of that wheel. So that is why our rear wheels can operate with two different speed. That is why we are using two encoders for rear wheels, and we are using only one encoder for the front wheel. Okay, so up to this, is this clear to you? Up to this, any doubt? Is this clear up to this? Okay, okay, so no doubt. Okay, okay, so yeah, so now let's go into this formula, how we receive this Vt and how we receive this Va. Okay, formula. Now the encoder, what does encoder measures? Encoder measures the rotational speed of the wheel. So it measures the n or rps or rpm, you can tell, that is revolution per minute or revolution per second. Okay, that it measures. So your encoder measures the rpm or rps. So as we are using one encoder for the front wheel, so so our actual velocity will be equal to diameter of the front wheel into nf, that is rps of the front wheel. Okay, but as we are using two encoders for rear wheels, so we are putting the average of this two wheel speed. Okay, so that is why what we are doing, we are averaging the rps measured by two rear wheels. That is why nr1 plus nr2 divided by 2 into diameter. When we are doing this, d into n will give our velocity. Okay, v equals to omega r, everyone know. So same formula, v equals to d into n, we can get the velocity. So by this we got VA and VT. Now the question is how this encoder calculates the NR1 and NR2. The encoders calculate the NR1, NR2 or NF by this formula. That is encoder calculates number of pulses. Okay, and every encoder has a refreshment time. Okay, that is generally taken as 1.5 seconds. So encoder measures the number of pulses and it has a refreshment time. So by this formula we can get the NF or NR1 or NR2. Whatever the pulse we receive for encoder 1, encoder 2 or encoder 3, if we put in this formula we can get the NF, NR1 or NR2 respectively. Okay, so this is the thing, this is all written in this theory. So is this slide clear to you all? Any doubt in this slide? Why we are using different encoders, what is slip? Is this thing clear? Any doubt in this slide? Okay, so it is clear, right? Gautam, it is clear, right? Okay, so that is good. So let me move on to the next slide. Okay, so we have discussed about slip. Now another parameter that is very important in traction, that is draft. Okay, now what is this draft? We have already discussed draft is horizontal component of pull parallel to the line of motion. Okay, so actually our line of motion, if you will remember, a line of motion is something like this. Okay, so this is our line of pull. Line of pull. A line of pull is something like this, LP. Okay, this is our line of pull, but we want draft. Okay, so how we can calculate this draft? We can calculate this draft as draft is the horizontal component of pull. So if this is the theta value, okay, the line of pull is making angle theta with the horizontal. So this is LP cos theta. So LP cos theta will be your draft. Okay, LP cos. Okay, LP cos theta is your draft. Okay, LP is the line of the pull, you can say, and or you can say P is the pull. Okay, so P is the pull. Okay, let me erase this. Yeah, if P is the pull and LP is the line of pull, then P cos theta is your draft. Now there is another component that is associated with the draft. That draft should be parallel to the line of motion. Now what happens is, some of our implement, the pull is not in aligning with the line, a line of the pull is not aligning with the line of motion of the tractor. Okay, like you can say, take the example of offset harrow or some other implement, moldboard plow. In all those implements, our line of pull is not aligning with the line of motion of the tractor. Okay, so what happens is, this is the view of one plane. Okay, and this is the view of the pull plane. Okay, so our you can say our line of motion can be in other plane. Okay, so if our line of motion in like this plane, so what we have done, pull we have taken pull in the horizontal component, that is P cos theta. Now this P cos theta can also have a component with line of motion of the tractor. Okay, so that angle, if I take this angle as phi, okay, so our pull our draft would be equal to P cos theta cos phi. That is the draft. Okay, so again I am explaining what is draft. Draft is the horizontal component of pull parallel to the line of motion, is known as draft. Okay, that is draft. So so what happened is, our line of pull is always inclined with the horizontal by an angle theta. Okay, so as this portion of the definition says it is the horizontal component of pull. So we have to take the pull in horizontal direction. So if the line of pull is inclined in this direction, this P cos theta is your horizontal component of pull. Now the second part is it should be parallel to the line of motion. Now some of the implement like your moldboard plow or disc harrow etc. In all those implement, not disc harrow, like offset disc harrow, moldboard plow, offset disc harrow, in all those implements are our line of pull is not aligned with the line of motion of the tractor. So for that implement we have to again take a cos component so that this P cos theta is aligned with the line of motion of the tractor. So this together makes the pull. This is the first component, this is the second component. So by first component we get P cos theta, second component we get P cos theta cos phi. So that is your draft. Okay, so is the draft clear? Is the draft clear to all of you? Okay, okay, that is good. Okay. Sondhara Rajan, any doubt? You have raised the hand. Any doubt?
Sir, please replay these concepts. I can't understand.
Okay, okay, again. So, one by one you follow me, okay? So, what is draft? Draft is horizontal component of pull parallel to line of motion. Okay? Is the definition clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so up to this it is clear. Now if we divide this definition, it has two parts. Okay, one is it is horizontal component of pull, second is it is parallel to the line of motion. Okay, so if you remember the second lecture, our pull is our line of pull is something like this. To the hitch, our line of pull is something like this. So it is making some angle with the horizontal, right? This is clear. This is your line of pull, LP.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is this clear? So according to our first part of the definition, it is horizontal component of pull. So if this is your line of pull, if this is your pull by P, if I denote, so what is the horizontal component of this? That is P cos theta. Up to this, it is this. Is this clear? Up to this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so up to this it is clear. Now there are some of the implements like moldboard plow or offset disc harrow. In all this implement, your line of motion of the tractor is not inclined with the line of pull. Okay, are you able to imagine this situation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in all those implements we have to use our second part of the definition also, that is it should be parallel to the line of motion. So let's say our line of motion is in the in is in the depth of this plane. This is one plane, this is let's say xy plane. Our line of motion is in xz. Okay, so if our line of motion is in xz, so let it denote by this dashed component. Okay, so this P cos theta will also make an angle with this line. Okay, this is your line of motion, LM. Okay, so this P cos theta is also inclined with the LM by some angle phi. Let's say it is phi. Okay, so what will be the component of P cos theta in LM? That will be equal to P cos theta cos phi. Okay, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Clear, right? Or again I should repeat the second part.
Yes, sir.
See, second part, see, this P cos theta is also making some angle with the line of motion of the tractor in some implement. So we have to shift this P cos theta in this line of motion. So as this P cos theta is making an angle phi with the line of motion, our actual draft will come as D will be equal to P cos theta cos phi. Okay, pi is from lm to what components? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
phi.
Understood.
Phi is from p cos theta to lm. Okay, this is the bottom or the horizontal plane. Okay, this plane, this lp and p cos theta, that is vertical plane, and this p cos theta and lm, this is the horizontal plane. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so that is the draft. Now if you understand what is draft, so draft, how we measure our draft, we measure our slip by velocity, and we measure the velocity by encoder. Now we are measuring the draft by an instrument called dynamometer. Okay, now what is this there are different types of dynamometer. Let me erase this. Yeah, there are many types of dynamometer. So the simplest dynamometer is spring type dynamometer. Okay, so spring type dynamometer is the simplest dynamometer, and it is used for rough measurement of draft. Okay, its measurement are not accurate. Why it is not accurate? Because it is subjected to vibration, and when the vibration it is subjected to vibration, there is no dampening action of vibration. Okay, there is no dampening action of vibration. That is why this type of dynamometer will give you a very rough measurement of draft, means there can be more error to this type of dynamometer. Okay, next is hydraulic type dynamometer. In this type of dynamometer, this is the hydraulic cylinder. Okay, so what happens is, when the when these two ends are pulled, the pressure of liquid in the dynamometer, pressure of liquid in the dynamometer varies, and by that we can get the force of the pull, that is we can get the draft. Okay, so this is another type of dynamometer. And the last dynamometer, that is very much used in our FMP or farm machinery, is strain gauge type dynamometer. Okay, so strain gauge, what is a strain gauge? Strain gauge are nothing but a sticker like substance. Okay, just like sticker. So what we do is, we put the sticker where the force is acting. So how this strain gauge gives you reading? Every strain gauge has a factor called gauge factor. Okay, and this gauge factor, this is constant for a particular strain gauge. Okay, now when the force is applied to this type of strain gauges, what happens is, there is change in strain or change in dimension of this dimension of this sticker. Okay, so when there is change in dimension, we can calculate the strain. Okay, strain is what? Change in length divided by actual length. And when this is calculated, we can get this we know, and this if we calculate, we can get the delta R by R. What is delta R by R? Delta R by R is the change in resistance. And when we know the change in resistance, if we multiply, okay, someone is joining, I think. Okay, so when we get this change in resistance, if we multiply I with resistance, that is equal to voltage, right? V equals to IR, right? So if we give a constant voltage to this strain gauge, we can get the change in voltage. And our change in voltage is calibrated in terms of force, pressure, displacement, acceleration, or other values. So as we are talking about dynamometer, so the change in resistance is calibrated to the force. Okay, so by that we can calculate change in force, and when we know the change in force, we can calculate the force acting on the strain gauge. And force is nothing but your draft. Okay, the draft we will stick those sticker in those places we want draft, so we will get the draft of the implement. Okay, so again I am repeating how this uh, strain gauge type dynamometer works. Strain gauge is nothing but a sticker like substances, Okay, now this sticker has a factor called gauge factor that is constant for every sticker. Okay, so what happens is when force or draft is applied on this strain gauges, there is change in length of this strain gauges. And we know strain is change in length divided by original length, so we can calculate the strain that is acting on the gauges. And when we know the strain is associated with change in resistance by this formula, gauge factor. Gauge factor is change in resistance divided by strain. So when we got the strain, when we know the gauge factor, we can get the change in resistance. And change in resistance, how we can convert resistance into voltage? V equals to IR. So when we multiply current with resistance, that we can get the uh, voltage. Okay, we can get the V. And change in voltage by actual voltage is calibrated to whatever quantity we want. As in dynamometer, we want the force calibration, so we can calibrate this delta V by V. We can calibrate to force. Okay, and force, or you can say draft for our implement. So by this we can calculate draft by this strain type gauges. So is this clear? Any doubt in this slide? Okay. Okay, so let me move to the next slide. That is calculation of draft in strain gauge dynamometer. So, okay, 1 minute. Let me check. Okay, yeah. So calculation of draft in strain gauge dynamometer. So what happens is, in each of the position we have fitted a strain gauge. Okay, so we have fitted strain gauge at strain gauge at two position. One at the strain gauge for tensile and bending stress, tensile and bending force in the lower leg, and the second strain gauge we have fixed for compressive force in the top leg. Okay, let me move this. So we are using here two strain gauges. We are actually using three strain gauges, two in the lower links, as we have two lower links, so two in the lower links, that is denoted by 1. Okay, this one and this one, that we are using for lower link. A lower link is subjected to two type of forces. One is tensile force and another one is bending force. Okay, this two type of force this strain gauge is subjected to. And second strain gauge, we are second or third, you can say third strain gauge, we are using for the top link. Okay, we are using for the top link to measure the compressive force. So again I am repeating, our his system has three link, one top link, two lower link. So for that two lower link we are using two separate strain gauges. Okay, that is denoted here by 1. Why we are using strain gauges for this? Because the lower link are subjected to two type of forces. One is tensile force and another one is bending force. Okay, someone is joining, I think. One is tensile force and another one is bending force, and we are using strain gauge for the top link to measure compressive force. Okay, so these are the three strain gauges we are using. Now there are four angles. Here you can see there are four angles. Okay, one is angle the lower link makes with the horizontal plane. So what is the angle that is making with the horizontal plane? We are denoting this by theta. The angle that the lower link is making with the vertical plane, we are denoting by phi. The angle the top link is making with the horizontal plane, we are denoting by beta. And angle the top link makes with the vertical plane, we are denoting by gamma. So again I am repeating, we have a lower link, we have top link. These are the two different types of link. Now the lower link is making angle with two plane, one is horizontal, one is vertical. The angle that it is making with horizontal plane, we are denoting this by theta. The angle the lower link is making with the vertical plane, we are denoting by it as phi. Similarly, the angle the top link is making with the horizontal plane, we are denoting it by beta, and angle the top link is making with the vertical plane, we are denoting by gamma. And when we have all this angles, and we have three forces that is measured by our strain gauges, right? So one is tensile force, one is bending force, and another one is compressive force, compression force or compressive force. So these are the three forces. So we have three forces, we have four angles, and when we have all this data, we can calculate the draft that is acting on the hitch of the tractor, and that is Tf cos theta cos phi plus Bf cos phi sin theta minus Cf cos beta cos gamma. Okay, so is this clear how we have conducted the experiment and how we reached to the formula? Is this clear? Any doubt in this? Okay, so I think no doubt. Okay, so yeah, so let me move forward. Yeah, now load cells. Okay, load cells are transducers which transform force into a considerable electrical outcome signals. Okay, so actually the strain gauges are always attached to this load cell, because I have already told you we want our signals in the form of voltage, that is delta V by V. Okay, so that is the work of the load cell. These are transducer. What are transducer? Transducer transform forces into considerable electrical outcome signals. Okay, and this is the diagram of the of the load cell. How the load cell is made? Load cell is made by different strain gauges. Okay, this is one strain gauge, this is another strain gauge. Okay, and this strain gauges are mounted on a flat cylinder. Okay, and why we are doing this? We are doing this arrangement to make a Wheatstone bridge. Okay, so what is the concept of Wheatstone bridge? According to Wheatstone bridge, there will be no current in the there will be no voltage output here if the resistance are balanced, but when the resistance are not balanced, there will be some voltage output in this terminal. Okay, this terminal there will be a voltage output. So what happens is, when the strain gauge is subjected to a force, there will be some change in resistance, and due to that change in resistance, we can get the voltage output from this load cell. So again I am repeating, load cell works on the principle of Wheatstone bridge, and works on the principle of Wheatstone bridge. How we are making the load cell? We are making the load cell, we are taking a steel cylinder, and we are sticking strain gauges on it. So what will happen is, we have four strain gauges. It has resistance R1, R2, R3 and R4. These are the four strain gauges we have arranged. We have arranged such that the strain gauges are mounted just in the form of Wheatstone bridge. So what happens is, when the strain gauges are subjected to some forces, there is some change in resistance to the strain gauges, and due to the change in resistance, we will be getting some voltage output, and that is the principle of the load cell. Load cell transform force into considerable electrical signals. So how it is transforming force into considerable electrical signals? By principle of strain gauges. So when the strain gauges will be subjected to some force, there will be some change in resistance, and due to some change in resistance, there will be some voltage output in this terminal. Okay, so this is the principle of load cell. Now calculation of draft in load cell type dynamometer. In load cell type dynamometer, all these angles we are taking 0. Okay, all the angles we are taking at is 0. Okay, so in this formula, if we put 0 0 in all those if we put 0 0 in all those, so this will become Tf. Okay, this will become Tf, this BF will be cancel out. Why BF will cancel out? Because sin 0 is 0. So this will cancel out, and CF minus CF. So our draft by load cell dynamometer will be equal to TF minus CF. TF is the tension force acting in the lower link, and CF is the compression force acting on the top link. Okay, now lower link, as we are using two strain gauges, that is why it is writing like that: TF left link plus TF right link minus CF. Okay, so is this thing clear? Any doubt in this slide? Okay. Okay, so I hope no doubt in this slide. Okay. Okay. So this is the thing. Now we will see power transmission in a two-wheel drive tractor. Now this is one of the most important diagram in the farm machinery. This will be asked to you again and again. So this diagram is known as power flow diagram of a tractor. Okay. So in a tractor, you know, the power is generated by an IC engine or internal combustion engine, or here it is written tractor engine. Okay, so we are generating power in engine, and now we want this power in rear wheels as well as the PTO. Okay, these are the portion we need power. So our power is generated in the engine, but we require this power in the rear wheels as well as in the PTO. So for that we need a power train. Okay, so after tractor engine we have this component called transmission. Okay, then after transmission we have a component called differential, and after differential only the power will go to rear wheel as well as PTO. So now the question is, why we require the transmission and why we require the differential. Now transmission, why we require? Now power. What is power? Power is torque into angular speed. That is power. Now what happens is, our engine has some power. If I denote the power of the engine as PE, then torque E into omega E. This is the formula for engine power. Engine power is equal to torque of the engine into angular speed of the engine. Now this we want as PW, that is we want wheel power. From this we want wheel power. Wheel power is TW into omega W. Okay, this is omega. Okay, and omega is the angular speed. This is also omega, and this is T. This is T. Okay, this is TW and this is omega W. Okay, and this is the power that we required in the wheel. As well as same formula is for PTO also. Power PTO is equal to torque of PTO into angular speed of PTO. Okay, now we require this transmission, because our engine has more power. Okay, engine has more power, and that power we cannot give it to the rear wheels. Okay, so for that we have some transmission in between, so that our engine power is reduced and we get the power on the rear wheels. Okay, so for that purpose we give the transmission, and we give the differential component. Why we give the differential component? Because we require different, sometimes in muddy condition we require different wheel speed, different wheel speed in different wheels. That is why we give this differential component. Now the differential component also helps in transmission also. Okay, because the differential component will have a gear ratio. So by that gear ratio, the differential component will also decrease the angular speed of the from engine speed to wheel speed. Okay, so differential also serve the purpose of reduction of angular speed. Okay, now tractor engine, we have tractor engine, there are power losses during each transmission. So in between tractor engine and transmission component we have a 5 to 10% of loss in power. And second, in differential, in transmission and differential also we have 5 to 10% loss in power. Okay, and after that we get the power in the rear wheels as well as in the PTO. Okay, so again let me repeat again. So this is the power flow diagram of a tractor. Okay, and in a tractor the power is generated in the engine, so that is denoted by tractor engine here. So yeah, this is a tractor engine component. Now we want this power from the engine to the rear wheels as well as PTO. But if we give the same power, if we give so what happens is, in the engine we have more angular speed. Okay, our angular speed in the engine is very much. If this angular speed we will give the rear wheel, so it will damage the roads or it will damage the tire. So this high angular speed of engine we cannot give to our rear wheels. Okay, so for that we have some two components in between. One is transmission and one is differential. Okay, now the transmission and differential serves the purpose of reducing the angular speed of engine to angular speed of rear wheels. The second function of this differential is, one, it distribute power at right angle, and second it during muddy condition what happens is, if our tire gets stuck in mud, we want different speed of the rear wheel. We want different speed for the left wheel and we want different speed for the right wheel. So for that also we require this differential unit. So that is the power flow diagram of your tractor. Now another important thing is, what is the reduction of the tractor engine power, or here we can say the BHP, the brake horsepower of the tractor. Okay, what is the reduction of the tractor engine power to the rear wheel and to the PTO power? Okay, what is the reduction, what is the value of reduction? If we assume it as 100%, how much power is left in the rear wheels, how much percentage power is left in the rear wheels, and how much percentage is left in the PTO? Okay, so this is the question. Now what happens is, this is the chart. So if gross flywheel is 100%, so the power that we get in the PTO, that is 83%. Okay, power that we are getting here is 83%, and power that we are getting in the drawbar, or you can see the rear wheels, that depends on different type of tractor as well as soil conditions. So generally we are talking about two-wheel drive tractor, and we are talking about firm soil. Generally this is the basic thing. So our drawbar power will be equal to 83%, 0.83. Our drawbar power will be equal to 0.83 into this 0.72. That will be equal to 0.5976. Okay, 5976. So that is the power that we are getting in the drawbar. That is why in question you have seen, when we have been given brake horsepower, our PTO power we generally take as 80% of the brake horsepower. Actually the accurate value is 83%, but we take as 80%. Okay, and whenever we have been asked the drawbar power, we take the 60%, or the actual value is 59.76%, we are taking 60%. So this is the logic behind all the calculation of power. So when, in the earlier questions also, whenever we have discussed question in the previous weeks also, what we have discussed is, we have been given BHP. Okay, BHP, that is brake horsepower, and we are writing PTO power we are writing as 0.8 BHP, and we are writing that drawbar power is equal to 0.6 bhp, that we assume. But why we are assuming this? We are assuming this because there is some due to this transmission and all, transmission in the engine and all, we are reducing, we are getting a reduced power. Okay, and what is the percentage of that reduced power? That is equal to 83% of the bhp. That is why approximately we write as 0.8 into bhp. And drawbar power, if you multiply 0.83 with two-wheel drive condition firm type of soil, that is 0.83 into 0.72, that comes as 0.5976. That is why we generally write drawbar power as 60% of the brake horsepower. So is this concept clear to you all? Is this concept clear to you all? It is applicable to all design in two-wheel drive. So, yeah, all design. Okay, and for four wheel also, for four wheel you have to multiply 0.83 wheel with 0.78. Similarly, if you are not going with tire, if you are going with track type of traction device, for that you have to multiply 0.83 with 0.82. Okay, and then you will get the drawbar power. And your PTO power is fixed, as it is not dependent on soil and other other type of condition. So our PTO power is always 83% of the brake horsepower. And for simplification, we write this 83% as 80%. That is 80% of brake horsepower. Okay, so I think this is clear. Now let me move to the next part. Now how we can measure the torque. Okay, so torque is measured by torque transducer. Okay, torque transducer, what we are doing, torque transducer, we are mounting the torque transducer on the extension shaft in between wheel axle flange and the tire rim diameter. Okay, so this is your axle flange. Okay, this is your axle flange, and this is your at the end of the axle flange your tire would be mounted. Okay, so we are putting the torque transducer at the this. Okay, so we are putting the torque transducer in between extension in between this extension shaft of the wheel flange and the tire rim. Okay, so this position we are mounting the torque transducer. Okay, this is your torque transducer. Now the twisting movement caused by the rotation of the loaded wheel measured by this torque transducer. So torque is what? Torque is rotation of the wheel. So that the twisting movement of this torque transducer will give you the torque of the torque that is coming on the rear wheel or the front wheel also. Actually, as the power is going on the rear wheel only, we are mounting the torque transducer in the rear wheel only, not in the front wheels. Okay, so this is the concept. Now this is the power flow diagram for an active tillage implement. An active implement means our working element is getting power from the PTO itself. Okay, so our rotavator is a type of active implement. So in this type of active implement, if we want to measure the PTO torque, so what we do is we place the torque transducer in between the PTO and the universal shaft. This universal shaft is the part of your rotavator. Actually, this part is the part of rotavator, and this part is the part of tractor. This part is the part of tractor. This part is the part of rotavator. So in between the tractor and rotavator, we are mounting this torque transducer to calculate the torque. Okay, is this clear? So again I am repeating, we are receiving torque at two positions, one at the rear wheels and second at the PTO. So for calculating torque in the rear wheels, we are putting the torque transducer in between extension of the axle flange and the tire rim. Okay, in this position we are putting the torque transducer. Now for PTO torque we are putting torque transducer in between this PTO and if there is some active tillage implement, there will be a universal shaft. So in between this PTO and universal shaft we are putting our torque transducer. Okay, is this clear to all of you? Again I am repeating, two torques we are measuring. One is we are measuring torque of the rear wheels. Second we are measuring torque of the PTO. So for measuring the torque of the rear wheels, we are putting the torque transducer in between extension of rear wheel flange and the rim. Okay, at that position we are putting the torque transducer. Second is to measure the PTO torque. To measure the PTO torque, we are mounting the torque transducer in between the PTO shaft and the universal shaft of the implement. Okay, so is this clear to all of you? Okay, so let me move on to the next slide. Now we will be discussing about vegetable transplanter. So we have already discussed about rice transplanter or paddy transplanter. Today we will see about vegetable transplanter. Okay, so like your paddy transplanter, also vegetable transplanter, like I have told you in the first class itself. For powering a farm machinery implement, there are three types of power. One is manual power or human power, second is animal power, and third is mechanical power. Mechanical, or you can say mechanical, or nowadays it is also electrical power also. So these are the three types of power. Now in case of transplanting, we are using two type of power. One is we are using manual power and we are using mechanical power. We are not using our animal power. Why we are not using animal power? Because this transplanting operation is a very precise operation. Okay, so that is why we are not using animal power. So we have only two power transplanter, one by human and second by mechanical. And mechanical also it is divided into two part. One is semi-automatic and there is automatic. So semi-automatic, in case of semi-automatic, what happens is we get a mechanical power source, that is tractor. Okay, but transplanting we have to do by hand. Okay, let me move this. Transplanting we have to do by hand itself. That is why it is known as semi automatic transplanting. But automatic transplanting, all the things are mechanical. Okay, there is no need for human intervention. So these are the three types of transplanting. One is manual transplanting, second is semi-automatic transplanting, third is automatic transplanting. So again I am repeating, in farm machinery we receive power from three sources. One is human, second is animal, third is mechanical or electrical. Okay, now in case of transplanting we are not using the second type of power, that is animal power. Why we are not using that? Because this transplanting is a very precise operation. Okay, that is why we are not using animal power. So we are using two types of power. One is manual power and second is manual power or human power, and second is mechanical power. Now in mechanical power also we are distributing it as in two parts. One is semi-automatic and second is automatic. In case of semi-automatic, it is a combination, you can say it is a combination of manual and automatic. So semi-automatic, the transplanting is done by human itself, but the power source is a tractor. Okay, so that is why it is semi-automatic. But in automatic it is totally mechanical, that is the power source is also tractor, as well as this transplanting operation is also done by mechanical power. So that is why this is an automatic transplanting. Now there are different classification of seedling for vegetable transplanting. So we are doing the vegetable transplanting by through a different type of seedling. So first is bare root type seedling. In bare root type technique, what we do is, in bare root type technique, plant is removed from the soil in dormant state and planted to a new soil condition. So when the plant is at dormant state means there is no growth in the plant. Okay, the plant there is no growth in the plant. So in some of the plants what happens is a stage will come. In that stage the plant will not grow, so that the plant will not show any growth. Okay, that is known as dormant state. So in bare root type seedling, what we do is in dormant state we uh, we uh, we plug the plant along with root and we plant it in a new soil condition. Okay, here you can see this is the nursery condition. From this what we do is we plug this seedling, then we plant it into a new soil. Okay, you see the first condition like areca nut. I don't have idea regarding areca nut, but I don't have idea regarding areca nut, but it could have be done by this bare root type seedling technique. Yeah, coconut. Yeah, coconut we do like this. Yeah. So what happens is we after it reach the dormant stage, we plug this type of seedling and we put this in a new soil condition. So this technique is known as bare root type seedling. The stock plant should be planted within 48 hours of receptor for optimal results. So when you are plucking the plant, you have to again plant in the new soil condition within 48 hours of time. Okay, this is the criteria for this type of seedlings. Now second is plug type seedling. Okay, so in plug type seedling what we do is we put the seed in a nursery tray. These are known as nursery tray, and in between the tray all this holes, or you can say all these cells of the tray has some peat based growth mix. What is peat based growth mix? These are vermi compost. Okay, these are vermi compost, these are not soil, these are vermi compost. So this vermi after the this vermi compost is this vermi compost is kept in all those cells, and after that we are putting seeds in all those cells. Okay, and after when the seedling is at stage when we can do the transplanting operation, we pull the plant along with the mosses also, means along with the vermicompost also. Unlike bare root seedling, we are only taking the plant only, not any kind of soil or other material, but here we are taking the vermicompost along with the plant. You can see here, over here we are taking the vermicompost also. This lower portion is soil or vermicompost. We are taking this soil based vermicompost along with the plant. Okay, this is the difference between the bare root type seedling and plug type seedling. So we are also taking the soil also, soil or this peat based soil. Okay, we are along with the root we are also taking the soil also. So this is plug type seedling. Now third is pot type seedling. In pot type seedling what we do is we are germinating a seed in a pot, and how this pot is made? It is made by a newspaper of density 50 gsm. GSM is a unit of density. GSM means gram per square meter. Okay, again I am repeating, GSM is gram per square meter. So what we are doing, we are taking a newspaper of 50 gsm and we are making this pots. Okay, and after we are making this pot, we are putting in this pot soil or vermicompost, whatever, and after that we are putting the seed. And when the seed grows, what we are doing is we are planting these pots in the soil. Okay, actually the paper that we are use that is decomposable. Okay, so what will happen is when we will plant this whole thing in the soil, our roots will grow and it will be inserted in the soil, and this paper or the pot will get decomposed. So this is a third type of seedling. Now there are different classification of metering devices for this vegetable transplanting, and there are particularly four type of metering devices. First is pocket type metering device. So in pocket type metering device, this we are using for transplanting bare root seedling. The other three we are using for pot type seedling. Okay, so pocket type metering mechanism is used for this bare root type seedling, and the plants that are used that are metered by this pocket type device are eggplant. Eggplant is nothing but your brinjal, tomato, cabbage, cauliflower, and sweet potato. Now, second type of metering mechanism is a vertical descending cup or bucket type metering mechanism. It is commonly known as bucket type metering mechanism. Okay, so in bucket type metering mechanism, it is commonly used in mulch planter and dibbling transplanter. Okay, so it is used for pod seedling. Yeah, same pod seedling and semi-automatic, automatic transplanting, and these are the two plants: eggplant and chili peppers. We are using this bucket type metering device for eggplant. Eggplant is your brinjal and chili pepper. Chili pepper is your pepper. Okay, and then rotary cup type metering devices. Rotary cup type metering devices. This is also used for pod seedling and semi-automatic transplanter. This bucket type we are using for both semi-automatic as well as automatic, but rotary cup type metering using device we are only using for semi-automatic transplanter. And this now yeah, this type of unit can plant 50 to 80 seedlings per minute row, and tomato, cabbage, cauliflower, and sweet potato we are using this rotary cup type metering device. Now conveyor type metering device, this is the last metering device. This is used for semi-automatic and automatic both transplanter, and it has a higher field capacity, means it can transplant more seedling. 84 to 90 seedling it can transplant per minute, and it is used in case of tomato, cabbage, celery, and broccoli. Okay, so these are all theory part. More diagrams and all you can refer to your lecture note. There you will get the diagrams and all. Now we will quickly move on to sugarcane planting. Okay, sugarcane planting, we are doing sugarcane planting also by two type of power. One is manual power, one is mechanical power. So in manual planting, what we are doing, the cane sets, yeah, sugarcane, how we are cultivating sugarcane, we are sowing not seed, we are sowing the canes of sugarcane. So every sugarcane, you can that a sugarcane has many cane is you can see this is a sugar cane, right? Now it has different cane. This is a cane, this is a cane. So this is the first cane, this is the second cane, this is the third cane, this is the fourth cane. The border or the division, you can say, that is known as cane of sugar cane. So in sugarcane planting, we are planting these canes of the sugar cane. Okay, so the cane sets are manually placed end to end or overlapping together with fertilizer in the furrow and covered with soil. This is pure theory based, so nothing to explain more. And now mechanical transplanting or mechanical planting of sugarcane. The three operation of opening the furrow, planting the seeds, and applying fertilizer conducted simultaneously. So as this is a mechanical type of planter, so all the operations, what are the different operations? One is opening the furrow, next is planting the seed, and third is applying fertilizer. All the three operations are done in one go. Okay, so that is why it is a mechanical planter. The advantage of mechanical planter over manual planter, it has more field capacity, means it can cover the field in less time than your manual planting. This is the advantage of mechanical planting, because it is doing all the operation in one go. The three operation, that is planting the seeds, applying fertilizer, opening the furrow, this is doing in one go. That is why it has more field capacity. Okay, so these are the two type of planter. Now, like rice, sugarcane, we have read SRI type of planting. In case of rice, SRI is system of rice intensification. Okay, SRI. So, like paddy or like rice, also we have a special type of initiative in case of sugarcane also, and that is known as SSI. There in rice we are called as it as SRI, that is system of rice intensification. Now in sugarcane we are calling it as sustainable sugarcane initiative, that is SSI. So SSI technology aims at providing practical option to the farmer in improving productivity of land, water, labor and other agricultural input at the same time. Like your SRI, the SRI also save all the resources, like SSI also save all the resources. Second is it reduce the overall pressure of water resources and contribute to recovery of ecosystem. So nothing to explain this. Third is use less number of seeds, less water and optimum utilization of fertilizer land to achieve more yield. So this is the third advantage of it. Now unit operation, how it operates. So in case of this SSI, what we are doing is we are planting this bud. Okay, unlike in this type of method, we are what we are using is we are using the cane sets of sugar cane. But in SSI we are using bud chips. What are bud chips? Bud chips are portion of your canes. Okay, bud chips you can see this is your whole cane. Okay, and the portion of your cane is your bud chip. Okay, at the joint there are some portion that is known as bud chip. In SSI we sow this bud chip. Okay, now seed treatment with growth promoting chemicals. Okay, this is I think printing mistake. Seed treatment with growth promoting chemicals. And third is raising nursery using single bud chips. Okay, here we are using a set of canes. Okay, not one cane, we are using set of canes, but here we are using single bud chip. Okay, and last is transplanting young seedling 25 to 35 days old. Like our SRI we are doing transplanting in 14 to 21 days. Here we are doing the transplanting operation in 25 to 35 days. So these are your some of the things of your SSI. And advantage, what are the advantage? Row to row as well as plant to plant spacing can be maintained by bud planting method. Yeah, because we are doing very precise operation in this SSI. Our row to row distance as well as plant to plant distance is well maintained. Okay, next is 80 to 90% seed material cane sets could be reduced by bud planting over conventional method of planting. So in conventional planting we are using the whole cane. Okay, but in bud planting we are only taking the buds of the cane. Okay, that is why we are reducing 80 to 90% of the seed material. Next is it facilitate easy transportation and handling of seed material, as we are the volume of seed is less. So so this method has advantage of easy transportation as well as handling the seed material. Next is there is a scope of intercropping. What is intercropping? Intercropping is cultivation of other crop in between the next crop. So what happens is, if we are doing this manual planting or mechanical planting, the distance between the rows are kept very less. But here, as the distance between the rows are maintained very well, we can go for a intercrop in between the two rows of the sugarcane. So this is the last advantage. Okay, so is this clear to all of you? Okay, this is clear to all of you. Now let me move to the next portion, that is we will discuss the assignment question. So again I will request everyone to answer. If you know the answer, I will request everyone to answer. Even if you don't know the answer, you can at least guess the answer. Okay, so that will have more engagement and that will create more interest in it. Okay, so today's assignment question will be discussed on the topics: estimation of wheel slip, estimation of draft, estimation of tractor axle and PTO torque, and last is vegetable transplanting. Okay, so let's see the first question. A strain gauge is a passive transducer and is employed for converting A is mechanical displacement into change of resistance, B is pressure into change of resistance, C is force into displacement, and D is pressure into displacement. So any guesses for this? Any guesses for this question? Okay, so Gautam is telling A. So yeah, your answer is very right. It is A. That is mechanical displacement into change of resistance. So our electrical strain gauge, I have already told you the principle. It has a constant gauge factor. Okay, so when there is mechanical displacement or there is change in strain, the resistance of it will change, and from the change in resistance, if we are applying transducer, we can get the change in voltage. Okay, so this is the principle of your strain gauge. So answer option A is your correct answer. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So is this question clear to all of you? We have already discussed in the theory. Any doubt? Okay, so I think it is clear to all of you. Okay. So let's move to the next question. Okay, which of the following forces in the 3-point linkage hitch system of a tractor can be measured using the Wheatstone bridge circuit of the strain gauge configuration? A is bending force in lower links, B is axial forces in lower links, C is compressive force in upper link, and D is all of these. So any guesses for this? Yeah, D is the right answer. So I have already told you, strain gauge is mounted in the lower links also, in the top link also. Why we are mounting strain gauge in the top link? To calculate the compressive force in the top link. And why we are using two strain gauge in the lower link? To calculate tensile force as well as bending force. So our bending force is covered by strain gauge in the lower link, our axial force is covered by strain gauge in the lower link, and compressive force is covered by strain gauge in the top link. So all of this is correct. Okay, all of this is your correct answer. So answer D is your correct answer. Okay, so let me move on to the next question. While measuring the draft of a mounted type implement using electrical strain gauges, the axial force on the lower link is computed with the help of 8 active gauges, 8 dummy gauges, C is 6 active and 2 dummy gauges, and D is 4 active and 4 dummy gauges. So any guesses? Okay, so no problem. Actually, strain gauge, I have already told you, there are 4 resistance, or the 4 resistance that is used for the Wheatstone bridge configuration. Okay, 4 resistance. Now question is, with 4 resistance, how many dummy resistance or how many dummy strain gauges we use? So for 4 active strain gauges, we are using 4 dummy gauges. Why we are using 4 dummy gauges? Because it serves as a regulation or control to the strain gauges. So what happens is, due to vibration and other kind of forces, the reading of the strain gauges can differ by little. So this dummy strain gauges, in those cases, this dummy strain gauges also comes into action, and when this dummy strain gauges comes into action, our error will get reduced. That is why we are using 4 active gauges as well as 4 dummy gauges to get the output voltage. Okay, so this is the concept. So with four active gauges, we are also using 4 dummy gauges. One dummy gauge for each for one active gauge. Why we are using this? Because in case of vibration or any other error, what happens is our one strain gauge can give you some other measurements. That is why if we use one dummy gauge also, we can get the average of this average measurement of this two strain gauges, and by that we are reducing error of the measurement. That is why 4 active gauges as well as 4 dummy gauges. So answer D is your option D is your correct answer. Okay, so is this clear to all of you? Okay, okay, okay. Now during a test, the strain gauge with resistance 250 ohm undergoes a change of 0.150 ohm, and strain of gauges and the strain of the gauge is 1.25 into 10 raised to by minus 4. Then the gauge factor will be equal to, these are the four options that are given: 0.48, 5.50, 4.8 and 0.55. So this is a very simple question. So we know each strain gauge has a gauge factor, okay, and that gauge factor we required to calculate. And what is the formula of gauge factor? Formula of gauge factor is this, that is change in resistance divided by strain. Okay, and this delta R by R is change in resistance ratio, and delta L by L is strain. Okay, so in this question, what is given? We have been given strain. So L by L, delta L by L we know. Now we have to calculate delta R by R, and delta R is given, that is change in resistance is given as 0.150, and resistance is given 250. Okay, so our answer will be 0.15 divided by 250. That by that we will get delta R by R, and delta L by L strain is already given, that is 1.25 into 10 raised to the 4. So when you will do the calculation, 0.15 by 250 divided by 1.25 into 10 raised to the 4, you will get the answer 4.8. So option C is your correct answer. Okay, so is this clear? Is this clear to all of you? Okay. This is a simple formula based question. For clarification, I am again repeating it. In this question, it was asked we have to calculate the gauge factor. So gauge factor formula is delta R by R divided by delta L by L. What is delta L by L? Delta L by L is your strain. Okay, and delta R by R is change in resistance ratio. So delta R by R, delta R we are given delta R, that is 0.15. We are given R, that is 250. We are given strain delta L by L, that is 1.25 into 10 raised to the minus 4. So 0.15 by 250 divided by 1.25 into 10 raised to the minus 4. When you will do the calculation, you will get the answer as 4.8. So option C is your correct answer. Okay, so let me move to the next question. So as per the ASAE standard, the rearward displacement of the implement for category 1, that is 15 to 35 kilowatt 3-point hitch should not be greater than, these are the four options. Option A is 103 millimeter, option B is 115 millimeter, option C is 127 millimeter, and option D is 132 millimeter. So any guesses for this? Any guesses for this question? Okay, so no guesses. So let me tell you the answer. So as per the standard ASAE, what is ASAE standard? ASAE is American Society of Automotive Engineers. So this is a standard. So according to their standard, the rearward displacement of the implement should not be greater than 127 millimeter for category 2nd and category 3rd tractor, that is 30 to 75 kilowatt and 60 to 168 kilowatt tractor. So for that, your rearward displacement should not be greater than 127 millimeter. But for category 1 tractor or category 1 or 15 to 35 kilowatt tractor, our rearward displacement should not be greater than 103 millimeter. So option A is your correct answer. Okay, so this is according to standard, so this is a proper theoretical question. You have to, according to the standard, you have to give the answer. Okay, so and option A is your correct answer. So is this clear to all of you? Is this clear? Okay, fine. So let me move to the next question. The metering device commonly used for merge planter and dibbling transplanter is: A is pocket type metering device, B is vertical descending type device, C is rotary cup type metering device, and D is conveyor type metering device. So it has been asked for merge planter and dibbling transplanter. So any guesses for this? We have already discussed in the theory. Yeah, Gautam is telling B. Any other guesses? Yeah, absolutely. It is B. That is vertical descending type, descending cup type metering device. That is used for merge planter as well as dibbling transplanter. So for this, we are using this vertical descending cup type metering device. So answer B, option B is your correct answer. Okay, we have already discussed this in the theory portion also. So I hope no doubt in this. Let me move to the next question. This is a very easy question. Full form of SSI is: option A is Sustainable Sugarcane Initiative, option B is Subordinate Sugarcane Initiative, option C is Sustainable Sugarcane Innovation, and option D is Subordinate Sugarcane Innovation. Yeah, Gautam is telling B and A. Okay, yeah. So confusion between B and A. Okay. Okay, so A, yeah, very right. So A is absolutely right answer. So like our paddy, we have a special type of cultivation that is known as System of Rice Intensification, SRI. So in sugarcane, we have this initiative known as Sustainable Sugarcane Initiative. That short form we are telling it as SSI. So in paddy, that is SRI, and in sugarcane, this is SSI. So this is the difference. So all the theory I have already discussed. So Sustainable Sugarcane Initiative is your correct option. So option A is your correct answer. Okay. So I hope this is clear. Now question number 8. To measure the torque of the rotating shaft, the strain gauges are fixed to shear planes on opposite sides of the shaft at an angle of: A is 55 degree, B is 50 degree, C is 40 degree, and D is 45 degree. So any guesses for this? Okay, so no problem. So answer is D, 45 degree. So for measuring the torque of the rotating shaft, we are using torque transducer. And torque transducer, how we are making the torque transducer? We are using two sets of strain gauges, strain gauges that are fixed 45 degree shear plane on the opposite side of the extension shaft. So I have told you torque transducer we are using for two purposes. One is to measure the torque of the PTO, and second is to measure the torque of the wheel. So in case of measuring the torque of the rear wheels, we are using the torque transducer in between the extension shaft of the wheel flange and the rim of the tire. And we are placing the torque transducer. How we are making it? We are making it by strain gauges that are fixed at 45 degree shear planes on the opposite side of the extension shaft. So this is a pure theoretical type question. So answer will be D. Okay, so D is your correct answer. Now let me move to the next question. Question number 9. in the draft equation, this is your draft equation, TF cos theta cos phi, BF F will be not there, BF cos phi sin theta minus CF cos beta cos gamma. The angle phi represents what? Okay, this is the question. So angle, option A is angle of lower link in horizontal plane, option B is angle of lower link in vertical plane, option C is angle of top link in vertical plane, and option D is angle of top link in horizontal plane. So any guesses for this? We have already discussed this. So any guesses for this, guys? Yeah, Gautam is telling B. So yeah. So these are the four angles, okay? Theta, phi, beta and gamma. Now we have been asked about phi, okay? And phi is angle of lower link in vertical plane. So yeah, option B is your correct answer. So again I am repeating, for this draft equation we require 7 variables, okay? These are the 7 variables. So 3 variables are force variables, and 3 variables are your 4 variables are your angle variables. What are the different force variable? One is tension force, BF is bending force, and CF is compressive force. And we have 4 angles. 2 angles that the top link is making with vertical, 2 angles that the lower link is making with vertical. So the lower link, 2 angle the lower link is making with horizontal and vertical, and 2 angle the top link is making with horizontal and vertical. So when the lower link is making the angle with horizontal plane, that we are denoting it as by theta, and when the lower link is making the angle in vertical plane, we are denoting it as phi, and when the top link, the angle the top link is make with the horizontal plane, we are denoting it as beta, and when the top link is making the angle with vertical plane, we are denoting it as gamma. And in the question it has been asked us about phi, okay? We have been asked about phi. So phi is the angle, the lower link that is making with the vertical plane. So lower link is making with the vertical plane. So that is denoting by that phi angle. So option B is your correct answer. Okay, B is your correct answer. So is this clear to all of you? This question? Okay, this question is clear, right, to all of you? Yeah. Okay. So let me move to the last question, that is the ratio of change in output signal to the change in input signal is known as, option A is accuracy, option B is resolution, option C is precision, option D is sensitivity. So any guesses for this? Ratio of output signal to the input signal. Yeah, Gautam is telling C. Okay, any other guesses? Okay, so option C is not the correct answer, option D is the correct answer. Okay, sensitivity is the change in output signal to the change in input signal. Okay, that is known as sensitivity. Okay, change in output signal to the change in input signal, that is known as sensitivity. Okay, and specifically in case of instrument or sensor, it is used to detect or response to vibration or change in input quantity, and it is designed as a measure. Okay, so what happens is, due to vibration there is some change in the input as well as output signal. So for that we are using this sensitivity term. Okay, what are the other three option means? Accuracy. Accuracy is how close your measured value is to your true value of the result, that is accuracy. What is precision? Precision is how close are your measured values to each other. And what is resolution? Resolution is the smallest quantity that can be measured by your measuring instrument. So again I am repeating this question. So in the question it has been asked this, the ratio of change in output signal to the change in input signal, and the ratio of change in output signal to the change in input signal is known as sensitivity of the instrument. Okay, and why is this sensitivity used? This is sensitivity used because if due to some vibration there is some change in input signal, so what is the change in the output signal? So for that we are checking the sensitivity of the instrument. Now what about the other three options? Okay, what about accuracy, what about precision, and what about resolution? So accuracy means how close your measured value is to your true value of your result. Like your true value should be equal to zero point 0.5, okay, but your measured value is coming zero point 0.5 only, okay. So your measurement is known as accurate measurement. Now your measure value is coming at as 0.4, so this 0.4 is not accurate, so this is known as accuracy. Now what about precision? In precision, we are only concerned about measure value, we are not seeing the actual value in case of precision. So in precision we are checking the measured value only. Like our 5 measured value, if we are taking 5 measure value, it is coming as 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0.4 and point, let's say it's 0.1. So this 0.5, 0.5 and 0.5, these are precise measurement, okay, because this measurement are very close to each other. 0.4 it is somewhat precise, but 0.1 is not precise at all, okay. This 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 are very precise, this 0.4 is somewhat precise, this 0.1 is not precise, so that is known as precision. Now what is this resolution? Resolution is the smallest measurement that can be measured by your measuring instrument, that is known as resolution, okay. So these are the four meaning of the four different terms, okay. So in question it has been asked ratio of change in output signal to change in input signal, so answer D or sensitivity is your correct answer, okay. So is this clear to all of you? What is precision, what is accuracy, what is resolution, and what is sensitivity to all of you? Is this clear? Is this clear? Any doubt? Any terms? Any doubt? Okay, so no doubt, right? Okay. Okay, so I hope this question is clear to all of you. So any doubt? Any other question? Any doubt? So no doubt in no other portion of the lecture, right? Sondhara Rajan, is that draft portion clear to you?
Yes, sir. Clear this, sir.
Okay. Okay, so
One doubt, sir. So I want to answer for first three questions. I did not
okay, so you
answer
okay,
that,
so
sir.
yeah, yeah. So you want the answer for the first three questions. Okay. So this is the first question. The strain gauge is a passive transducer and is employed for converting A is your mechanical displacement into change of resistance, B is your pressure into change of resistance, C is force into displacement, and D is pressure into displacement. So strain gauge, what I have already told you, strain gauge is we are measuring the gauge factor, that is delta R by R divided by L by delta L by L, okay, delta
L.
L by L, okay. So how this strain gauge measure your quantity or measure your force? It measures your force by mechanical displacement, and by this mechanical displacement there is change in there is change in length, or change in length, or there is change in there is strain produced in your that strain gauge, and due to this strain produced, when we will multiply the gauge factor with the strain, we will get delta R by R, or change in resistance. So your strain gauge, what it is doing is it is changing mechanical displacement to change in resistance. So option A is your correct answer, okay.
Okay, sir. Understand.
Okay, now second question. Second question is, which of the following forces in a 3-point linkage system of a tractor can be measured by a Wheatstone bridge circuit of the strain gauge? So you know for 3-point linkage system, we have 2 lower link and we have 1 top link. So for this top link, what we are measuring? We are measuring compressive force. Okay, so this is C. Now for this 2 lower link, we are measuring 2 type of forces. One is bending forces and another one is axial force. Okay, these are the 2 forces that we are measuring. That is the axial force also and bending force. That is for lower link. So lower link we are measuring 2 forces. One is bending force and another one is axial force. And for top link we are measuring the compressive force. So all the 3 forces we are measuring. So option D, all of this is your correct answer. Okay.
So what mean by axial force, sir? It means force along the shaft, sir.
Yeah, axial force is your tensile force only. Okay, so if this is your bar, okay, this is your bar. Okay, so if we are pulling this, okay, if we are pulling this force is known as tensile force or axial force. Okay, same, tensile force or axial force, this force. Okay, the pulling force. And another type of force is your compressive force. What is compressive force? If this bar is subjected to compression, okay, that means inward force. Okay, that is known as compressive force. Okay, and what is your bending force? Bending force, this is your bar and it has a center line. Okay, and from this center line, if we are bending the substance like this and like this, that force is known as bending force. So these are the 3 forces: tensile force or axial force, compressive force, and this is your bending force. Okay.
Okay, sir, I understood, sir.
Okay. Now third question is, while measuring the draft of a mounted type implement using electrical strain gauges, the axial force on the lower link is computed with the help of the axial force, that means tensile force. Okay, in the bottom lower links we are experiencing tensile force, and in the top link we are experiencing compressive force. Okay, so axial force means they are talking about tensile force. Now axial force on the lower link is computed with the help of Wheatstone bridge, right? Now Wheatstone bridge combination, for Wheatstone bridge combination we required 4 resistance. That is clear to you, right? We required 4 resistance. Now,
Sir.
yeah, hello. Okay, so we require 4 resistance, right? So 4 resistance R1, R2, R3, R3 and R4. This 4 resistance we require. Why we require 4 resistance? Because when we are using this force resistance, this circuit becomes Wheatstone bridge circuit, and when this circuit becomes Wheatstone bridge circuit, the output voltage is 0. Now when there will be change in resistance in any of the strain gauges, there will be a output voltage produced, and by this output voltage produced, we are getting the axial force. Okay, this is the concept. Now you will say we required only 4 strain gauges, but in this question they are asking something like active gauges, dummy gauges, etc., etc. What is this? Now what happens is, for each strain gauges we are considering R1 as active strain gauges and R1 dash as dummy gauges. For each active gauge we are using one dummy gauge. Why we are using one dummy gauge for each active gauge? What happens is, during the operation there are many outside errors, like due to vibration there could be some errors, or due to some temperature change there can be errors, etc., etc. There could be many factors due to which the resistance, the change in resistance would not be accurate. Yeah, so for that we are using a dummy gauge. So by this what we are doing is, when by this what we are doing is, due to this dummy gauge combination of active gauge and dummy gauge, what happens is the error will be reduced. That is why for each active gauge we are providing one dummy gauge. So that is why for 4 active gauge we are providing 4 dummy gauges. So this is the concept. So D is your answer. Okay, is this clear?
Yes, sir. It's clear, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Okay,
explanation, sir.
okay. So I hope all the questions are clear to you all. Okay, okay. So this by this I am terminating today's class.
Yes, sir.